This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so Parsha Chukat, page 838 in the Stone Chumash, Perek Yutet, chapter 19, Pasuk Aleph. And this Parsha has a lot of somewhat seemingly disparate things going on. A brief overview. We're starting off, excuse me, with the laws of the para aduma, the red heifer, that we'll get into and spend some time on that, not too much time on that. After that, we have the death of Miriam, and then a lack of water, and the resulting Moshe supposed to speak to the rock, hits the rock, and therefore does not go into the land of Israel. After Miriam's death, we have Aaron's death, and we have a series of wars that we are attacked. And then we also have the very strange, which we'll focus on a bit this morning, the strange issue of the attacks of the snakes, and Moshe making this copper snake and looking up at that, and they were healed. And actually, I forget what it's called, but that insignia, that international medical insignia of the staff and the two snakes wrapped around it actually comes from this week's Parsha. So in the past, we've spent a full class on Moshe hitting the rock instead of speaking to the rock, and we're just going to touch upon that kind of briefly in the context of the flow of what's happening in this parsha. So let us though begin with the para aduma, with the red heifer, and the Torah. The parsha begins Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is the chok, the decree of the Torah that God commanded, saying, Daber al b'nei Yisroel, speak to the children of Israel, v'yikhu elecha para aduma tamima asher ein ba mum. This red heifer has to be unblemished, completely red, that has never worked, no blemish, and it has not come under the subjugation of mankind, right? It is free, and has never been subjugated, and that then is slaughtered. After it is slaughtered, it is burned, and then with other things that are mixed in also, and then the ashes are used in the purification process of a person who became tamei mate, a person who became impure through their contact, carrying of, or being under the same roof covering as a mate, as a person who has died. A person who has died gives off tumah, ritual impurity, making other people also tamei, making them impure. And the only way that a person can remedy, can purify themselves from this tumat mate, from the impurity of coming in contact with a person who has died, is through the sprinkling of these ashes mixed with water, with natural spring water, and it's sprinkled on the third and on the seventh day, and then the person becomes tahor. Sounds very, very, very strange. Okay. Now, this is actually very relevant today. Often we read in the news about Jews praying on the Temple Mount. Okay, now it's a fiercely political issue where Israel, when we regained control of Jerusalem, liberated Jerusalem in the 1967 war, and Hakotel biyadenu, Harabayit biyadenu, and we took control of the Temple Mount, upon which the Muslims had built their mosques on the ruins of the Beit HaMikdash, and Islam builds their mosques on the ruins of other synagogues or churches based on their understanding that they are 2.0, as we've been discussing in our Thursday Holocaust anti-Semitism series. They believe, as Christianity believed, that they were taking Judaism to the next level. Islam believes they're taking monotheism, both Judaism and Christianity, to the next level. And therefore, of course, what else should you do on the ruins of a synagogue or a church other than build a mosque? Of course, we beg to differ on that view, on that interpretation. But that is a central, not the central, it is the third central place in Islam. Israel was very concerned of this worldwide explosion if we were to maintain control of the Temple Mount, and therefore we granted control to the Waqf, which is the Islamic rule there under Jordanian control at this point. And they instituted absolutely no Jews are allowed to pray there on the Temple Mount. And as crazy as that sounds, that is Israeli law. And Jews who do visit the Temple Mount, if they are moving their lips in prayer, they can be arrested for that. Kind of bizarre. Now, from a halachic point of view, the Rabbanut, the chief rabbin of Israel, has a sign by the entranceway where Jews would enter the Temple Mount that says, according to Jewish law, Jews should not enter the Temple Mount. The reason for that, nothing to do with the Waqf, nothing to do with there being a mosque there, but the area of the Temple Mount, the area of the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple, that retains its kedusha, its holiness, even after the destruction of the temple. And therefore, a non-Kohen is not allowed to enter those areas, and anyone, even a Kohen, who is tamei, who is ritually impure, is not allowed to enter that area. Now, there are many religious authorities who say there's no problem to go up there as long as you know which area to stay away from, meaning they feel confident that they know which is the actual courtyard area upon which there was the courtyard, there was the holy, and there was the holy of holies. They feel confident that they know exactly which parts of the, what we call the Temple Mount area, is actually the courtyard, and they stay away from that area. And besides that, there's no problem in going up. If one goes to Israel and you go to the Kotel, to the Western Wall, and strongly urge everyone to take the tunnel tours, where they've excavated all along, what we see as the Kotel is one little blip of a much larger wall, which was this retaining structure of the by Harabayit. And when you go along these tunnels, right, and you're going all along the wall, you come to a certain point where there is a lectern, a stender there, and that is right across from the Holy of Holies. And that's the closest that we can get to the Holy of Holies. So people are encouraged to pause there and offer a prayer for our people, for your family, whatever it might be. So there are those that say that we know that area of where the courtyard actually is, and therefore as long as you stay away from that area, you are fine. And other halakhic authorities say best not to go up there at all. But even a Kohen can't go up there, because at this point we are all tamei mate. We've all, even a Kohen who does not go to a cemetery, but for a parent, father, but for those closest of relatives, the 7 relations for which a person would mourn is officially an avel, a mourner, which is 2 going up a generation, father, mother, 2 going down a generation, son, daughter, 3 parallel generation, brother, sister, spouse. For those 7, a Kohen does become tamei, does involve in the burial and all that goes on. And even in the absence of that, everyone's been to a hospital, there might have been a person, right? We have to assume everybody is tamei mate. We don't have the para aduma. We don't have the red heifer. Every once in a while you hear in the news that there's a red heifer that's in this farm over here in Lakewood over there, and people see that as an indication of the arrival of the Messiah, because now we're getting ready for all the things that we'll need. When Mashiach comes, we'll need this red heifer. We'll need to all become tahor in order to be able to go to the Beit HaMikdash. V'mheira v'yameinu, may be speedily in our days, but we don't have it at this point. But again, it does still apply to us very much today. But this is considered to be the epitome of a chok. A chok, again, being a law that we do not know the reason behind. It does not mean a law for which there is no reason, but it means a law where the reasons behind it were not shared with us. So we have certain mitzvot that we call mishpatim. And the root of mishpatim is shin fei tet, shafat, judgment, that we, with our own judgment, we understand those laws. Those laws against false testimony, laws against murder, laws against stealing, we understand those are all mishpatim. And then we also have those which are called edut, testimony. Shabbat is a testimony to God, our belief in God's creation. Pesach is a testimony to our belief in God having taken us out of Egypt. Shavuot is a testimony to the receiving of the Torah, the Sinai experience. Sukkot is a testimony to God having sheltered us as we made our way through the desert for those 40 years. There are those testimony mitzvot. And there also are these chukim that the reasons were not shared with us. And the question is often asked, why is there a need for chukim? Either tell us why, or don't give it to us as a mitzvah. Why do we specifically have this category of mitzvot, commandments? But I'm not going to tell you why. Why do we specifically, how do we understand why Hashem felt the importance of giving us specifically this category of mitzvot, where the reason behind it is not shared with us? Yes, Marta.
Is it not that he wants us to figure it out for ourselves and see how we handle a situation that's not stipulated as to how to handle it, giving us our own judgment? Okay.
So does he want us to figure it out ourselves? That's an interesting question. So actually, Shlomo HaMelech is sort of taken to task on this. King Solomon is taken to task because there were certain mitzvot where the reasons were given, right? A king should not have too many wives, lest they will cause his heart to stray. And Shlomo said, oh, that's why? I got it. No problem. I can have many, many wives, and it won't cause my heart to stray. And he had many wives, and it did cause his heart to stray, right? So I'm not sure if we're supposed to figure it out. Now, we always will give some explanations. I've mentioned before, basar b'chalav, milk and meat, right? Why can't you mix the two? I don't know. You can't mix the two. That's what the Torah says. Rav Hirsch has a whole beautiful explanation on milk and meat, right? Not mixing the two. Very, very briefly, he says, what does a plant want to do? What is a plant's two aspirations in life? What does every plant want to do?
Grow.
Grow, right? Why does it want to grow? Because that way it can get its photosynthesis, it get its sunlight, it gets its nutrition. It wants nutrition. And what else does it want to do? A plant's life, what does it want to do? Nutrition.
Reproduce.
And reproduce. A plant wants nutrition and reproduction. Along comes the animal kingdom. How does the animal kingdom differ than plant life? Well, it has the ability to move. What does an animal use its ability to move to accomplish?
Survival.
What does an animal want to accomplish in life?
Survival.
Survival, nutrition, and reproduction. So therefore, what is an animal in terms of its aspirations? It's a mobile plant. It's a mobile plant. All it wants to do is eat and reproduce. And it has the ability to move to enable it to do that. A human being is not supposed to be all about nutrition and reproduction. We're supposed to go beyond simply being interested in nutrition and reproduction. So now, if I were to take one item that represents nutrition and reproduction, an excellent item that represents nutrition and reproduction would be milk. Because milk is what gives the life-sustaining nutrition upon the result of reproduction. A child is born, reproduction has happened, and how does it survive? Nutrition. What nutrition does it receive? Milk. So milk, he says, represents nutrition and reproduction. What represents mobility? What gives the animals the ability to move? They have muscles. Muscles, contraction of muscles is what gives us the ability to move. That is basar. That is meat. So meat and milk represents taking the added qualities that I have, mobility, and using it simply for milk, simply for nutrition and reproduction. A human being needs to realize that the added qualities that we have as human beings with a soul and all that entails, we can't simply use that for nutrition and reproduction. Therefore, we have to separate the milk and the meat. We separate that added ability of mobility, the added aspect of the added ability of mobility. we separate that from reproduction and nutrition. We separate the two. That is Rav Hirsch's brilliant analysis.
Wow,
But
yeah.
bottom line is, it's a chok. We don't fully understand it. The Torah tells us to do that. And it's similarly when it comes to the para aduma, right? We take that which is red. Red stands for vitality, strength, and it's fully red, and it's unblemished, and it is never worked, right? It's at full vigor, and it's reduced to ashes. Right? A person, there's tumma, there's impurity when we come in contact with a mate. Why? Because it gives us the sense when we encounter death, it shakes our faith to a certain degree about the eternity of a human being, the eternal aspect of a human being, the eternal soul, because that person was alive and vibrant, and now laying there, right? Just lifeless. That causes this tum'ah, this impurity in us, in our thinking. Is there really anything more? And then we take those ashes of the paraduma, and that is what then, and then we mix it with mayim chayim, we mix it with natural spring water, right? And it shows that there is this rejuvenation, and it's that rejuvenation that we experience that then sprinkled on us that allows us to become tahor. Perhaps. But essentially, we don't understand, and we're not meant to understand, and we're not going to understand. So why command us? Why give us these laws? Tell us why, or don't give it at all. Yes, Cheryl.
So when Moshe hit the rock, that was a chok, and so much that Hashem told him to do, we're all like that. He didn't understand it, and when he did question, he was reprimanded for doing so. So Hashem wants us to have faith that the little we do know and understand should carry us through to those things that he has told us to do that we don't understand.
Okay, I hear that, Cheryl. Ladera, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of say something very similar. You know, I believe maybe he gives us some of those things just to see, or for us to prove that we love him, and we'll do it no matter what.
Okay. So to build on what both Ladera and Cheryl are saying, right? In a relationship, if I only do that which makes sense to me and that which it resonates with me, that's not going to be much of a relationship, right? You know, when a spouse or a dear friend asks you, can you do something for me, right? So the correct answer is not what, the correct answer is yes. What would you like? Why? Because we understand that this dear friend or spouse or whoever it is not going to ask us to do something that is beyond us. So we show our trust in a relationship when it doesn't depend on just what makes sense to us. At the very essence of Judaism, and this is an area where Orthodoxy and certainly Reform part ways in a very significant way. We understand, Torah Judaism understands that this is coming from God. And we're not meant to understand everything. And we're not going to understand everything. And if God would only give us things that we understand, then we might fall into the trap of, well, if it makes sense to me, I'll do it. If it doesn't make sense to me, there's no reason to do it. But if we're going to limit God to what makes sense to us, to our 4 square inches of gray matter, then we've completely degraded God. So there are certain commandments that will be given to us where it is, my dear children, the same way, and this is the best example, the same way that at certain times, there are certain things a parent can't explain to their toddler. They can't explain it to their 3-year-old. They can't explain it to their 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old. There are certain things that you just can't explain to them. Well, the difference in understanding between us and a 10-year-old is nothing compared to the difference in understanding between a creator of the universe and ourselves. And therefore, we need to show that, yes, we are following God. I'm not following my intellect. I'm not following what makes sense to me. I'm willing to humble myself before this creator and say, God, if this is what you say needs to be done, okay. I'm not going to have a suit that has wool and linen together. Why not? I don't know. I don't understand what the problem is in shatnez and wool and linen together, but the Torah, that's a chok of the Torah. And therefore I show that, yeah, I'm with you, God. I'm not serving myself. I'm not serving my intellect. I'm not serving my understanding. I'm serving you. And therefore there are times where I need to say, I don't understand, but I recognize I'm dealing with a God. So there's no reason why I should expect myself to understand everything. And therefore, I'm in. Sign me up. Ora.
So it takes me back to how was it in Ma'amad in the Sinai the Torah event that we said Naaseh v'nishma.
Yeah.
So in other words, first of all, you do it, and it's an exercise in faith when we don't understand.
Faith and humility. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. That's exactly Naaseh v'nishma. That's correct. Yeah, Lidero.
I was going to say the same exact thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Great minds think alike. See that?
Yes. And also Hashem says, he also says that, my ways are not your ways. So it's, a lot of things aren't meant for us to get,
Yeah. Yeah. And what's fascinating is we start off Zot Chukat HaTorah in Pasuk Bet. This is the decree of the Torah. We don't say Zot Chukat HaTum'ah. This is the decree of impurity. We say Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is the chok of the Torah. Meaning, even that which we think we understand, we might be understanding on a certain level, but there's so much more to it. There's so many other layers behind it. So this then reflects on the entire Torah, even those mitzvot, that you think you understand. Well, you might understand it on this level, but there are myriad levels to all of it. Zot Chukat Torah, and very important is that we recognize then, right, this also trains us that when it's not the case of a mitzvah that I don't understand, but it's an event that I don't understand, it's a tragedy that I don't understand. So this trains us to have, as Ora and Lero said, have the faith and the humility to recognize, I don't understand. I'm not going to understand. I'm not God, and therefore I'm not going to understand. I am so limited in that which I can understand, and I'm willing to accept that. I'm willing to accept that. So this chok category of mitzvot then really needs to reflect and impact the way we view the world and life. There are certain things that we're not going to understand or understand fully. Some we won't understand now, we'll understand later. Some our belief is we don't understand in this world, in the next world. That's when we'll fully understand. That's when we'll fully understand. You know, at my father's funeral, one of the things that I said, you know, he lost his wife, my mother, right? And then thankfully was able to remarry, had a wonderful life, lost a daughter. And I know these things always plagued my father, as it always plagues everyone. And one of the things that I said at the funeral was, Daddy, thanks for being so strong for us. And now I know all of your questions are answered as you are reunited with Mommy and Daddy. Now it makes sense to you. We're still left here scratching our heads, but for you, you've gone on to the next stage. Now it makes sense. So the chok needs to impact on not just our view of a particular mitzvah, but a view of life, a view of the world, a view of all that transpires. Okay, let us jump ahead and to page 842, Pasuk Chaf. Perek Chaf Pasuk Aleph, chapter 20, verse 1, page 842. Vayavo b'nei Yisroel kol ha'edah, the children of Israel, the entire congregation came to Midbar Tzin, b'chodesh harishon, on that first month. Okay. The entire congregation, Rashi says, and in the English also you have it over here on page 843, under the line, you have the commentary, chapter 20, a new era was now beginning the life of the nation. 38 years had passed since the narrative in the previous chapter. So we had previously, what did we have? Right? We had we had Korach, we had the Meraglim. That was all towards the beginning of our time in the desert. And because of the spies, the Meraglim, and our reaction, 40 years in the desert, we're reaching the end of that time, and we're starting to get ready to go into the land of Israel. Now, keep in mind, this is a new generation, and they've all been either children who left Egypt or born in the Midbar. So what world are they living in? They're living in a supernatural world. We want to eat, man comes down. We want to drink, it comes out of this rock, what we call the Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam. And there are these clouds of glory that surround us. That's the world, and it's incredible, but also it could be a little bit much, because it's like, you know, if I would follow you around with a video camera, recording everything that you say and everything that you do, at a certain point you say, can I just go to the bathroom by myself, please? Right? Can I have just a few minutes? Right? And that was the intensity of this Midbar experience. And now we're coming to an end. We'll soon be 38 and a few months in. Another year and a half, we're going into the land of Israel. And it's going to be very, very different. And we need to start to get ready for that. What happens over here towards the end of this Midbar? Vatamat Sham Miriam. Miriam dies. Moshe's sister Miriam dies, and she's buried there. This is chapter 20, 842. And suddenly, there was no water for the congregation to drink. And they came to Moshe, why didn't we die like our brothers died? Why did you bring us into the Midbar to die here? Why did you take us out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt? Right? This is not a place of Te'ena, Geffen, Rimon. This is not the place that you spoke about. place of the seeds, the figs, the grapes, the pomegranates. Umayim ayin lishtot, and there's no water to drink. Hashem tells Moshe, take the mateh. Take the staff and gather the people and speak to the rock. And as we know, Moshe ended up hitting the rock instead of speaking to the rock. So why was Moshe told to take the stick if he wasn't supposed to use it? Right? So the way some of the commentators explain brilliantly, take the staff. What is the staff? Which staff did we just hear about? Which staff did we recently read about? The staff of Aaron, that dry staff that sprouted into blossoms and almonds. Take that staff, not the staff that Moshe uses to hit and split the sea. No. Take that staff that shows that out of completely dry, lifeless material, water, life, sprouts can come. And speak to the seller and tell it that just like this staff had its water, its growth, tell the seller to do the same thing. Moshe goes, ends up hitting the rock, and because of that, again, we're not going to spend too much time on it, Moshe is not allowed to enter into the land of Israel. Yes, Ladero.
So in the commentary, it says God commanded Moses to take the staff that he used to perform the miracles in Egypt. So it's not. So why does they talk about a different staff?
Okay, so that's one approach.
Okay.
Right. What I told you is the Kli Yakar's approach. That it's not that one of the, because he's bothered. Well, why would he take that staff if he's not going to use it? See, he says Hamater is Aaron's staff. But there are different opinions amongst the commentators. Yes, Ora.
Well, I think if it is the mateh from the parting of the sea, then maybe there was a test for Moses to take the staff but not use it, but he did use it and he failed.
Okay. And the idea, according to that, or if I could build on that, would be that we need to have a new approach, right? David Foreman speaks about this. Until now, it's been this completely miraculous, unnatural state where you kind of are beating nature into submission, that it's not acting in its natural way. But entering the land of Israel, we need to go from hitting to speaking. Others also say, that when we left Egypt, we needed the hit the rock. That was the mode that we understood to get things done. But now we're entering the land of Israel. That generation is no longer there. And now it needs to be a speak to generation. There are those that explain that that's why Moshe, it wasn't a punishment that Moshe was not going to go into the land of Israel. It was that Moshe was not the leader who would take us into Israel, because we needed a new mode of leadership, not a hit the rock mode, but a speak to the rock mode. Okay. And then what happens? So we're getting closer to the land of Israel. 844 by Rabbi, Pasuk Yud Daled. Moshe sent messengers to the king of Edom. Edom is the descendant of who? Of Esav, of our brother Esav. And he said, this is what your brother Yisroel says. You know all that we went through. We went down to Mitzrayim. We were there. We were enslaved. We called out to God. God took us out. And now here we are by the border, your border. Let us go through your land to get to the land of Israel. Right? We won't go off the road. We'll buy things from you. We're not going to cause any problems. And he answered, don't even think about it. Pasuk 18, Yudchet lo ta'avor bi. You will not pass by. If you do, I'm coming out with my sword over here. So we were saying, listen, we're brothers. Abraham, our common ancestor, grandfather, was told your children will be enslaved and then they'll get this land. Well, you weren't enslaved. We were enslaved. We're the ones through whom that was fulfilled. Let us pass through now and we'll get the land. But Edom said, absolutely not. So now what happens? We have to start traveling back. We can't go directly. We've got to start to circumvent. Imagine the frustration that we saw. For the first time, we saw a populated area. Wow, people plant, people grow. Amazing. And then we're heading back into the desert. We're not on our way to Israel. We come to Horahar, and Aaron dies. So Miriam has died. Moshe's sister Miriam dies. Moshe's brother Aaron dies. Everyone is crying for Aaron. What was, all right, it's interesting. Take a look at 848. Vayivku, pasuk 29. Vayivku et Aaron shloshim yom kol Beit Yisroel. The whole house of Israel was mourning for Aaron. It doesn't normally say the whole house of Israel. Why? The whole house of Israel, the men, the women, everyone was mourning, crying for Aaron. Aaron was the Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom, the person who loved peace, the person who pursued peace. He would help mend any of the different arguments, right? He did the marriage counseling. He did it all. He kept everyone together. And therefore they all cried. 21, chapter 21, 848, the Kanani, the Melech Harad, heard that we had come there. What did he hear? Rashi brings that he heard that Aaron had died, and all of a sudden those clouds of glory had dissipated. Why had those clouds of glory dissipated? What's the connection between Aaron's death? So the clouds were there in the merit of Aaron. But what's the connection? So there's an approach that the clouds of glory represents God's presence. When is God's presence there and felt? When there is shalom, when there is peace. We say ish, the isha, a man and a woman. If there's peace between them, the shekhinah, the divine presence is there. If there's no peace, then fire is there. And ish, aleph yud shin, is the word aleph shin, aish, fire with a yud. Isha, aleph shin hey, aish with a hey. When ish and isha, when there's peace between them, they're an ish and an isha. Yud is there, hey is there. Yud hey spells the name of Hashem. Hashem is with them. Everything is beautiful. If there's no peace, Hashem says, I'm out of here. And what are you left with? Take out the yud, take out the hey. You've got aish and aish. You got fire and fire. Good luck. Doesn't often go so well. So once Aaron, the peacemaker, was no longer there, then there started to be machloket. There started to be strife. What's the result of strife? The clouds of glory leave. Hashem's presence is no longer tangibly felt. And this king thought, now I can attack. And he comes and he attacks. And we're able to fight them off. Pasuk Daled. We're now heading back towards the Midbar. Imagine the frustration that people are feeling at this point. Here we were getting so close. We just needed to pass through Edom and we'd be on the border there. And instead we're heading back. And the people, their spirit grew short. And they spoke out against God and against Moshe. Why did you take us out of Egypt to die in the Midbar? Ein lechem, there is no bread. Ve'ein mayim, there is no water. But nafshenu katzah b'lechem hakolokel, and we're getting disgusted by this bread that is such a strange bread, such a strange food, right? The same thing over and over, even though we say miraculously they could taste whatever they wanted from the man. But whatever you have, you grow weary of. So what happened? Vayishlach Hashem ba'amet hanechashim hasrafim. God sent fiery serpents against the people. They bit the people, and many died. They came to Moshe, we've sinned, we've spoken against Hashem and against you. Take away this serpent. Hashem says to Moshe, make for yourself a serpent, place it on a pole. Whoever is bitten will look at it and live. Moshe made a serpent of copper and placed it on the pole. If the serpent bit a man, he would stare at the copper serpent and live. What is going on over here? Right? So famously, it wasn't this looking at the serpent, the copper serpent, that would heal a person. Right? We say the nachash is not meimitu mechayeh. That's not what gives a person life or death. But when we look up towards the heaven, then we recognize Hashem, and then we would live. But why these serpents? Right? Like, where did that come from? Right? We've had the earth opening. I mean, this is, right? Why fiery serpents? So Rav Hirsch points out a grammatical anomaly over here. If I want to say I sent, how do I say in Hebrew, and I sent? And he sent? Va-yish-lach. And he sent. What does the pasuk say? Vai-shalach. Vai-shalach is different than Va-yishlach. Va-yishlach is and he sent. God sent. Vai-shalach. How would you define Vai-shalach, Ora?
Something like inflicted?
Or Vai-shalach, that he released almost. He let it go.
He let it go, yeah.
He let it go. So turn to page 982. In Devarim, this is Devarim chapter 8, Parak Chet. And let's go down to Pasuk Vav, verse 6. And to say it's not, I'll take it in English. You shall observe the commandments of Hashem your God, to go in his ways and to fear him. Hashem your God is bringing you to a good land, streams of water, springs, underground water coming forth, valley and mountain, the land of wheat, barley, grape, fig, and pomegranate. All the things that Bnei Yisrael had just complained, you haven't brought us to a land of figs, pomegranate, grapes. Moshe said, I'm bringing you there now. A land of oil olives, date honey. A land where you eat bread without poverty. You will lack nothing there. A land whose stones are iron, from the mountains you will mine copper. You will eat, you will be sated, you will bless Hashem your God for the good land that he gave you. Page 985. Take care lest you forget Hashem your God by not observing his commandments, his ordinances, that's the chukim, his decrees I command you today, lest you eat and be satisfied, and you build good houses and settle. Your cattle and sheep and goats increase. You increase silver and gold. Everything you have will increase. Your heart will become haughty. You will forget Hashem your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt in the house of slavery. That is the challenge. Once we leave the Midbar and we go into the land of Israel, now it's not man from the heavens. It's not water from a rock. We're digging the irrigational ditches. We're doing the planting. We're doing the plowing and the planting and the fertilizing and all the work. And you have to remember that with all that, it's Hashem who's giving it to you. It's not kochi va'otzem yadi. Verse 15, who leads you through the great and awesome wilderness of snake, fiery serpent, scorpion, and thirst where there was no water, who brings forth water from the rock of flint, who feeds you man in the wilderness. What does it mention over here? It mentions the snakes over here, meaning it's not that God sent snakes. When you're in the desert, a desert is filled with snakes. The snakes were always there, but we were being protected. And now Hashem is saying, oh, you want to handle this yourself and cut me out of the equation? Let me show you what it looks like when I'm out of the equation. Not vayishlach, not God sent snakes. Vayshalach. God stopped holding back the snakes. He allowed the snakes to do what snakes do. So it wasn't that God said, hey, what's a crazy punishment? Let me say, hey, how about snakes? Haven't done that yet. Right? No, the snakes are all around them. They're in a wilderness. And miraculously, none of them are bitten. None of them are attacked. No one's dying from snake bites. Hashem says, you want to cut me out of the equation? Fair enough. As you wish. I'm out. Vayshalach. What happens naturally as a result of that? The snakes do what snakes do. And then Moshe made that copper snake, and we looked up at the heavens. And we looked up at we forced to look at the heavens, we recognize, Biyadcha afkid ruchi, Hashem, we're in your hands. And this is what we needed to recognize as we're getting ready to go into the land of Israel. There's not going to be water from a rock. There's not going to be manna from the heaven. There's not going to be clouds of glory that encompass us. But we are still fully biyadcha avkid ruchi. We're still fully in the hands of Hashem. And that's the world that we always come back to, that we live in today, where we don't have the manna, heaven, and water from a rock and clouds of glory. And we work, and we work with from the sweat of our brow. We earn our bread. And we recognize we don't, as we said, as Moshe told us in Devarim, right? But we recognize that it is Hashem who does all this. You may say in your heart, Kochi votzim yadi, my strength, the men of my hand, made me all this wealth. Remember Hashem, it is He who gives you the strength to make wealth in order to establish His covenant. This is what we needed to learn. So it wasn't these snakes coming out of nowhere. The snakes were always there. You want to be on your own? Let me show you how that looks. And this is what we needed to learn as on our way into Israel. That we're going to be working with nature, not hitting the rock, talking to a rock, right? No longer having water from a rock, no longer the clouds of glory, but recognize where we are and who it is that is guiding us and taking care of us every moment, every heartbeat of our life. This is how we needed to prepare ourselves as we're going into Israel. Yes, Ora.
I'm sure it says somewhere the dimensions of the staff. You speak about watching it and looking up to the sky or to the heavens. So is there a mention somewhere about the length of it?
Interesting. Not that I know of offhand, but I can take a look and see if I can find anything. It was on a pole, right? How high it was, I don't know of a measurement that's given. High enough that when you want to look at it, it's not like this, but it's like that, right? It forced people to look up and to train their attention, their kavanah, on the Shamayim, Shmei Shamayim, on Hashem, and not on their own little world that we create around ourselves, but to see past and beyond and above, but that, and to train our focus properly. Yeah. Okay, my friends. Yasher koach, everybody. Thursday we'll be continuing with our lunch and learn, 12:30. All are welcome to join us then. Let me wish everybody Shavua Tov. Good seeing everybody. Linda, I don't think I asked you before. Once we start doing it in person, do you prefer in person, or would you prefer to continue? I will still stream when it's in person. Will you prefer in person or prefer to continue with the streaming? How do you plan to attend?
I don't know. I've kind of got it into the habit now of staying home on Shabbos. So that's kind of nice.
No, I'm talking about Tuesday morning.
Oh, Tuesday morning. It was a lot of, it's much easier if you stream it.
Okay.
Because it takes me at least a whole hour to drive there on Tuesday mornings.
I hear that. Okay. Yeah. So for certainly the immediate future, we will continue with streaming and not start in person. And at a certain point, I hope, we will return to in person, but continue streaming at the same time. Okay, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that's the best option, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I think that's the best option, streaming and recording it.
Yeah.
So thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.